I've said many times on this channel that I tend to bet on the jockey and not the horse. I've also said that I love a jockey who hates to lose, who absolutely refuses to lose, who would rather cheat than lose. Call it unsportsmanlike, call it whatever you want, but I'm going to bet on that jockey. Right now, there's a significant rumor that a certain leader who seems to really hate to lose might be willing to put his finger on the scales to the benefit of crypto and other risk assets to the tune of trillions. If the only rumor you want to hear is that things are finally going to stop sucking in crypto, or if you're finding value in these videos, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies DRep address and the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. All right, everybody, thank you for joining. We've got some interesting things going on the macro front, sort of for all of economics and for all of crypto, and also some interesting things going on inside Cardano today. So we're going to talk about all those things. Good morning, Fly Trout. Thank you for joining. Daniil says 75 days countdown. Exactly. Will there be anything at the end of the 75 days? We don't know, but we're going to talk all about it. Jay Marie says, what's up, everyone? I can't wait to hear about this trillions that are about to come into crypto. Let's go. Daniil already knows what it is. Yep. Visor and helmet making a comeback. Let's go. We'll see about that. D.U, thank you. Appreciate that. Otis Frichov says, awesome camping weekend, but now it's time to get serious. Let's go. Yep. I hope everybody's getting outside and doing fun things. If you're in the Northern Hemisphere before all the super cold weather sets in here, if you're that far north. Ease Weeze says, are we in trouble? We're gonna talk about it. We're gonna talk about something hopeful. Bindocamp says, I don't know, man. Whatever that says, I cannot, you know what? I cannot read. I'm guessing that is Japanese and I cannot read it. So, Bindocamp says, maybe I'll stick with Los Gets. Oh, okay. That's let's go. You're saying that's let's go in Japanese. Okay. Fair enough. That would make sense because that's the right system, I think, for, although I know nothing of Japanese, that's the right system for foreign words. So that would make sense. Adam Olson says, if you would have told me that my DCAs would be in the red 3 years ago, I would have given up on cryptocurrency, but here I am, ? I think this is a similar sentiment that's going through a lot of our minds right now. Rulo13 says, hola, Rulo. Are we talking about the massive reply from Charles? We are. What's that about? We're going to talk about it. Cardano Maxi says, let's go. Howdy, Streetwise. Bindocamp says, grab them discounts if you can, is all I got to say. NeoChat says, almost to the end of mining. I'm tired, boss. I'm tired too. Yeah, we're getting toward the end. We're going to talk about mining. Jose Cano, hello. Pucky Hawk, hello. Good day. Thank you for joining from Melbourne. Appreciate it. Electric Race. Yep. We are live streaming. Oh, yeah. Jesse D says, have a great day to everybody. Streetwise is saying probably let's go or hello from Shanghai. Probably one of those two, I'm guessing. Isaro Bargas says, hey. Grokism says hello from the Great White North. Nick from Minneapolis. Good evening. Dr. Doak says, finally managing to listen live. Howdy. Welcome. Thank you for joining from Tasmania. A go kickflips. I don't understand that reference. I don't know what you're saying. Not sure what you're saying there. A go. Maybe there's a follow-up for something earlier. Carve me a smile. Thank you for catching it live. I appreciate it. Isaro Bargas says Palamus is in the house. But Cardano is Japanese Ethereum, so you should be able to read kanji. So that did not look like kanji to me. I don't think that was kanji. I think that was what was that? What do we call it? Hiragana and katakana, something like that for writing foreign words. I have no level of understanding of Japanese, so I can't really read either. But you guys can tell me. Those of you who speak Japanese can probably tell me. Okay. BindoCamp says GPU miners have hit the scene. That would be trouble for all of us on CPUs for sure. In Mandarin, that's literally add oil. Let's go. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Crypto Invasion says I switched to the server dark side. My laptop's died trying to mine. Looks like Duckpool is here. Oh, Kickflips was trying to say IO, AO, AO. Okay, fair enough. Yep. Okay. Carve Me a Smile is saying hiragana, katakana, and kanji. Yeah, again, I don't know. I can't read Japanese, but it looked like hiragana, katakana to me. It didn't look like kanji, but you guys can tell me. Cardano Universe says more rice. Okay, fair enough. All right. Well, that was a lot of comments. Thank you everybody for joining, but we're gonna jump right in. So we've got some hope, guys. It was getting, it seems like the night is always darkest right before dawn, right? I think we've all heard that expression, and I think it kind of applies to crypto a lot of the time. You hear this a lot with anytime anything's building, and I think Cardano and crypto are certainly building. Throughout the entire existence of crypto since 2009, it's just been building, and certainly the same for Cardano since its inception. It's just been building, And you always hear stories. You hear the stories about Tesla, like Tesla, if they didn't get a little bit more financing in, it was like December of some year. Elon's told the story a million times. And if they didn't get a certain amount of money in that December, the whole thing was going to fold. He was going to lose everything. And right at the last minute, the money came in and Tesla was able to become what it is today. We might be having one of those moments right now in crypto. It's a little uncertain. This is rumor. This is all going to be rumor. After all, this is the Cardano rumor rundown. So we do talk about rumors, and this is a pretty big rumor. Some of you already know exactly what this is. So here's what we saw. We saw this from a, known crypto personality, certainly no friend of Cardano. I would say, there's crypto personalities and we know which ones like Cardano and which ones seem not to be our friends, so that's going to play into this. How we evaluate this rumor, I think we have to take into account who this person is. But the post was this: I just got off the craziest call I've ever had. I can't share names or details because I don't want to compromise anyone. But the short summary is that I have been advised confidentially that a massive, possibly multi-trillion-dollar liquidity injection is coming within 75 days. So, we see these kinds of rumors all the time in crypto, and we don't necessarily take them seriously because this is one of the big things we talk about. I think everybody, after this many cycles, everybody realizes that liquidity plays a huge role in the crypto cycle. Those parabolic highs seem to only come in times of high liquidity. And, they've been coming every 4 years. We also all know, because we've lived through it, unfortunately, that the cycle is different this time. It hasn't done in Q4 of year 4 of the cycle what is done in previous cycles. We haven't gotten it. It hasn't happened for us. It's been terrible. We've lived through a terrible year 4. So, of course, everybody in crypto is interested. Could this possibly be true? And Charles responded, tell me more about your huge stimulus package, Mike. So Mike Alfred said, call me at 7 a.m. This was, earlier today. Call me at 7 a.m. Be prepared to have your mind blown. Chat then. Right? Very interesting response. So Charles had something to say about this. So after their call, apparently, Charles posted, he's not lying. It's massive. He's not lying. It's massive, all capital letters. So what could this mean? What could this mean? Could this really be a gigantic injection of possibly multi-trillions of dollars. So here's what jumped into my mind immediately. And again, this is all rumor land. We're just speculating. This is baseless speculation. So don't rely on any of this. Don't rely on anything ever on this channel because it's all rumors. We're just talking about rumors here. But what I think is that we've got a White House administration that hates to lose. They hate to lose so bad. The head guy up there, he will post degrading things about people, personal degrading things about anybody who stands in his way. This dude hates to lose. He will use his giant social media accounts to post degrading things about individuals if they just vote in the wrong direction on anything. This dude hates to lose. And when you look at 2025, it does not look like a big win. 2025, as far as domestic economic policy, does not look like a big win. In fact, you could argue that a lot of 2025 for this White House administration has been spent on international policy, international relations. It's been like 2025, the year of IR policy, international relations policy, foreign policy. This has not been the year of domestic economic policy. But we also know that next November, next year in 2026, those are midterms. And we just had some elections, and it didn't exactly go the way this White House would have loved for it to go, right? You can rationalize those elections however you want, depending on which side of the aisle you're on, what part of the political spectrum, whatever. We don't care about that part for purposes of today's conversation. But what we can say is they probably weren't loving that election. So they've got to worry about those midterms. And what every White House administration knows is that international policy is important, but what voters really care about, what really hurts voters, is domestic economic policy. What either hurts them or excites them, domestic economic policy. And just like S. Walker posted here, 48 cents hurts. Can someone hold me tonight? I think a lot of American voters are in that same camp, not even as to crypto, but as to the entire economy, right? It's been said before, this White House administration measures its success by the S&P 500. You know, it's risk assets are a big metric that this White House seems to measure its success by. And we also know the president's sons are heavily into crypto. They've got big crypto companies. In fact, we're going to talk about one of them later. We're going to talk about Charles being involved in an investment in one of their big companies. We know the president's sons are involved in crypto. We know the White House administration measures its own success to some degree based on the performance of risk assets. So are they going to sit idly by? 2025 has not been a good year, hasn't been a great year really for risk assets like crypto. In fact, you could argue this has been the worst year ever because we all expected what usually happens in year 4 of the 4-year cycle, and it hasn't happened at all. So we could argue that this has been one of the worst, most disappointing years for crypto ever. And this president is the crypto president. Out of all the presidents we've ever had, this is the crypto White House administration. And what they produced has been the opposite of the good results we all hope for. So maybe it's possible. Maybe it's possible this is real. Because if you've got a president who hates to lose and the elections just didn't go as planned, he's got the big elections, the midterms next November. Even his sons are in crypto. Like all 3 of them are heavily involved in crypto. Even the young one, they're all heavily involved in crypto. That's a lot of incentive, and he hates to lose. That's a lot of incentive to do whatever it takes to get risk assets where, to a point where they can declare it a win, get the stock market, to get the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ at numbers that they can declare a win going into those elections next November. So is it possible that this could be real? I'm saying that this is a president who hates to lose so bad he would do anything, even inject trillions of dollars of liquidity into the market, because it's not all just the Fed cutting rates and the Fed, going back into, hitting the end of quantitative tightening on December 1st, maybe pausing for some amount of time and then going into quantitative easing. That's just the Federal Reserve, which is, quasi-independent organization. The president also has The US Treasury, which is not a quasi-independent organization. It's an agency in the executive branch of government. Trump has direct control over the Treasury through the Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent. He can do whatever he wants with the Treasury, and the Treasury has many tools at its disposal to increase liquidity. So when we go back and remember what's happened over the years, this is the Fed balance sheet, right? We've talked about this many times on this channel, even recently. Ever since May 2022, it's been nothing but tightening. So no help there, no reprieve there. The owl has had no mercy for the mice over at the Federal Reserve. Then we look at M2. And you look at M2 and you say to yourself, wait a second, here's that same period, like spring 2022, May 2022, Q2 2022. And yeah, we had the dip, but then it looks like M2's been increasing ever since then. It looks like M2's been increasing ever since then. But what's wrong with looking at this chart? This is just M2, right? It's not real M2. It's not M2 inflation adjusted. And what is this kind of spike going from here when you're at a 15 trillion M2 up to a 22 trillion M2? What is that? That is definitional inflation, like literally the monetary base as measured by M2. We've got different measures, but this is M2. The monetary base went from 15 trillion to 22 trillion. That's a huge amount of inflation. So the dollars we're talking about over here are not the same as the dollars we're talking about over here. For that, we've got this chart. And when you look at this chart, this is real M2. So M2 adjusted for inflation, we see that same jump. But here they're saying, yeah, when we talk about 15 trillion in 2020, in terms of what is this, $1980? I think they measure it based on 1982 to $84. So they're saying really when you said 15 trillion over here in like 2019, what that really was in 1982 dollars was a little under 6 trillion. And then over here, when you got up into that May 2022 spot, really what you had, or let's go to the top, inflation adjusted, the top was more like here, more like here-ish in Q4 of 2021. So the top is even in a different place. And really, instead of it being $22 trillion, really what you had was more like 7.6 trillion. And then look at this difference. Instead of it being, this non-inflation adjusted curve where you would think we're at the same place we were at the top, right after the top of the crypto cycle, actually we're way below that. Inflation adjusted, we've gone downhill, and then it just kind of went flat. We haven't had that increase of inflation adjusted. We haven't had that increase in the monetary base that you would think based on this other M2 chart. Look at this. It looks like we're back to where we were right at the top. Right here, it looks like we're back to where we were, but inflation adjusted, no, we've had nothing but down since 2022, and then it's basically just been flat. Very, very slight increase. So no help. But if this is true, what this could be, if Charles is correct, this poster is not lying, and it's massive, this could be the White House administration saying, hey, we refuse to lose. Even if we have to cheat, we're not going to lose. We're not going to say we lost the economy going into those midterms next year. We're going to juice the economy. We're going to put our finger on the scale, and that finger on the scale is going to benefit. I mean, no guarantees here. This is all baseless speculation. But generally, the history of crypto so far has been when governments do that, it's very beneficial for crypto, just like it is for other risk assets. So this is the very, very interesting rumor at this point. And normally, if this was just this poster saying this, I probably would have ignored it. It wouldn't even have registered. Wouldn't even have been on my radar. I would have filed that away and not really paid any attention to it, right? That would have been something I was like, that'd be nice, but I wouldn't really pay much attention to it. But this is interesting because apparently this poster and Charles had a conversation about this thing, and Charles seems to agree this is something crazy. So you notice this is the 75-day timeline that Daniil was referencing. He says, the short summary is that I've been advised confidentially that a massive, possibly multi-trillion-dollar liquidity injection is coming within 75 days. Where does that put us? If you plug that into a calculator because you can't count calendar days, you've got the end of January. When you listen to this, it's going, if you do that, if you count the days, you're going to end up the very last day of January. So this is very interesting because if you're a White House administration that said, hey, we're going to do a bunch of international stuff in 2025, then in 2026, we get down to brass tacks and we focus 100% on domestic policy. What is the nuclear economic weapon you could drop, and when would you drop it? The nuclear option would be to drop multi-trillions of dollars into the economy, just a straight up liquidity injection to kickstart the economy, just like you had during the first term of this, basically the same administration, when they had COVID, and the answer was to go from that non-real M2 measure of 15 trillion to 22 trillion. It worked back then. I think they probably said to themselves, if we've got 2026 to do a lot of domestic economic policy good, the best way is the nuclear option. The best time to do that is January. Give ourselves a full 11 months for everybody to feel the effects of trillions of dollars of liquidity. So can they do it? Yeah. The Treasury has significant tools it can use to create liquidity in the market. Should they do it? From an Austrian economics perspective, not at all. No, they should not do it at all. Will they do it? That's the question we're examining tonight. I would say the argument for the yes case that they will do it is that we've got a jockey on that horse who doesn't like to lose. Do I think he would do this thing that Austrian economics would say is bad for the future in order to get the short-term benefits and do better in those midterms next November? I would say yeah. He would definitely do it because this dude does not like to lose. So this is the very positive thing that's going on right now. So Cardano Universe says that would be end of February or so. Charles teases and speculations are always nothing burgers. See Dish, Project Genesis. So let's see. I guess what do we got? We've got 15 days left in November, plus 60 for just November and January. I'm saying it's like the end of January, right? It's like the last day of January at this point. Okay. So this is from Skolder. Skolder says, Charles's teases and speculations are always nothing burgers. Yeah, I mean, Charles is the head of a project. It's like Elon saying we're going to have full self-driving in like 2019 or whatever. Like you're going to get that from the founder of an ecosystem. So, I mean, it has more gravitas with me because they actually talked on the phone and Charles was impressed because the person who posted this initial rumor is not exactly a friend. I wouldn't say this person has been like a friend of Cardano. So I think Charles, after talking to him, if he thought it was a nothing burger, I think Charles would have been more than happy to say, this is nothing. I'm not impressed, whatever. I think he would have been happy to get after this person. But the fact that Charles came back with this, he's not lying. It's massive. If Charles just said this, if I just heard from Charles like, hey, I think we might get trillions of dollars of liquidity, that would be massive for our ecosystem, I would think maybe it's more like the Elon thing, like full self-driving 2019 or whatever. The fact that somebody who's not really regarded as a friend of Cardano said this, Charles basically called them on it like, oh, please tell me about this massive liquidity, then talked to the guy and then said, he's right, this is massive. I think the chances are a little higher this is something. So I'm hoping it's not a nothing burger, but it's crypto. We've been disappointed in the past a billion times. So we'll see. S. Walker says, my Shiba just extended a paw. I'm good, bro. Okay. Okay, that's good. Yeah, I mean, the injection of trillions of dollars of liquidity would probably mean that the Treasury would use every tool at its disposal to inject liquidity. They've got a million ways to do it. They use a million euphemisms to describe printing money, but it all boils down to liquidity coming into the system. And we would just probably call all of those forms of injection of liquidity printing money in crypto. The stimulus comes before February. Yeah, I think that's right. I think the very, very end of, you can call it the very end of January, the very beginning of February. I think that's right. Wall Street and Main Street may do well next year with the RWA set, Chainlink and stables scaling. We will be stuck in NFT community, in-house trading. I mean, yeah, if you have a big bag of NFTs, yeah, I mean, I think if you had a big bag of PFP NFTs, you've kind of been stuck at that status this entire cycle, right? It's like, we all remember the heyday of NFTs last cycle. That certainly hasn't taken place this cycle. So yeah, I mean, I think you're right to a certain extent. Okay. End of January before tax refund season and stimulus checks. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if it happens and when. Okay. Okay, Adam. Who is this? Who is it, Adam, that you're talking about who lives in Albuquerque, New Mexico? Who is it? Give me a hint. Or just tell me. Okay. That's right. Within means 75 days or earlier. It's like earlier than 75 days or earlier. That's right. Yeah. I mean, it gives us something to look forward to. I mean, this could turn out to be nothing, mist, vapor. It's like we've got one guy reporting something he was told, another guy responding to it enthusiastically. Could be nothing, could be vapor. We don't know, but it's something. It's something. Maybe a Bitcoin treasury deposit. Okay, now we're talking. Now we're talking about possibilities. What if it's straight up not just an injection of liquidity in the general economy? What if it's a straight up injection of liquidity in crypto? I don't think we can. It's too much to imagine an injection of multiple trillions of dollars directly into crypto. That'd be ridiculous at this point. I can see the market cap going up by that much, but it takes much less than that for the market cap of all of crypto to go by that much. But it could be an injection of liquidity into the greater economy that, amounts to multi-trillions. But some part of that is a Bitcoin treasury deposit, or just a Bitcoin treasury creation that goes beyond them just keeping the crypto that they've confiscated. So we'll see. We'll see. I hope that's part of it. Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. I mean, this is like a temporary. I actually, I don't know. I'll say I don't know. I haven't followed. I know they're going to sort of litigate that issue. That issue over the Affordable Care Act. I think in January. Whether or not the same thing could occur then, I haven't paid enough attention to the budget process to even understand that part of it. I hope not. That's bad for crypto, so I hope that's not the case. They want you to buy so they can sell. Always a possibility in crypto. You can't trust these crypto social media accounts. Myself being one of them, I would say you can't trust these crypto social media guys. This is what I'm saying, S Walker. Yeah. The S Walker's Shiba's ears just perked up. Yeah, that's how I think we all feel in crypto right now. Okay. Adam Olson says John Jones. He thinks John Jones. You think John Jones should be in the White House? That would be, man. If we ever had a John Jones in the White House, I would reconsider my citizenship. I think I would reconsider. Very possibly the greatest fighter in the world. When he decides to show up, but the leader of the free world, I don't know about that part. Yeah, Trump did promise a BTC treasury, but then guys like Scott Bessent walked it back and said, "Oh, but it could just be us keeping the the stuff we have. It could be us just keeping the stuff we've confiscated. So there's that. That would not be like net purchases. It would mean they don't sell the stuff they confiscated. That part's good. Maybe they will make a new coin worth 1 cent and send everyone a few thousand. Like they create a new penny. Like the penny is going digital and they just send everybody a few thousand pennies. That would be interesting, actually. BindoCam is correct. BindoCam is 100% correct on this. Yeah, I remember those. I agree that those kinds of statements were made. And specifically what I was thinking of is what you posted here, Lummis's speech. Whether or not it happens or not is the question, though. Okay, Otis Fricio, now you're talking my language. What if government entitlement programs were paid in stable coins? Now you're talking my language, because this is something you could imagine happening. It'd be wild, you know what I mean? If so, what we know is that people that receive government entitlements, they will jump through some hoops. And if the hoop is just that you have to download a wallet onto your phone and learn how to deal with stable coins, they would do it. People would do it to get the entitlement, and it would probably be a lot more efficient than those same entitlement benefits riding on TradFi rails. Instead of them being transfers between TradFi bank accounts, if it was just a stable coin being sent across blockchains, that would probably be cheaper, if they chose the right blockchain, basically. So this is a very interesting idea. Robert Scott, I've talked about this a little bit. It's my first reaction to that is definitely like, absolutely, I want to be a part of that. But then, I think about sort of my independent status. There is some value to being completely independent, because I noticed when people I never became a Cardano ambassador, and a lot of people ask me about that. I never became a Cardano ambassador because I noticed that whenever somebody who was a Cardano ambassador said something, at least in the early days of that ambassador program, whenever a Cardano ambassador said something that certain people didn't agree with, and I just mean like any group of people didn't agree with, the first thing they would say is they'd be like, at Cardano Foundation, do you think one of your ambassadors should be saying this? So it was like this like subtle censorship pressure to not say certain things. And I don't ever want to feel like I can't be totally honest with everybody who listens to this channel. I always want to feel like I can be totally honest, and not be, not have my speech be restricted by relationships. I always want to be able to give you what I think is the absolute truth. So there's that. And I'm not saying that every ambassador program is going to involve censorship or anything like that, or even that the previous Cardano ambassador program involved censorship, because I never saw the CF actually respond to any of those or anything like that. But what I noticed was immediately people tried to use the membership in that ambassador program as leverage to silence people when they said things that somebody didn't like. So there's that. So both things are kind of in my mind, Then there's the fact that 20% of the earnings have to go into DeFi, which is, we're going to talk about DeFi in this stream. We're going to talk about DeFi, so maybe we'll talk about that when we get there. Apple wants you to upload your passport to your phone. So this is kind of an interesting thing. Like Apple, like uploading your passport to your phone is fine if it's optional. If it's optional, it's great. If it's mandatory, not so great, right? That starts to feel like the dystopia, the digital dystopia for sure. What if the stimulus will be in Bitcoin, sort of like El Salvador did for their citizens? I wouldn't be opposed to it. I'd be okay with it. I mean, same thing as the entitlement benefits that Otis Fricio brought up. It's like, I think it's okay, because if people are getting free money, they're willing to jump through some hoops. And if the hoop is just, hey, you have to learn about crypto a little bit, it feels coercive, but I think I'm okay with it. Target of E-Rage. It does. It gives the people who would target you over their E-Rage a tool. It puts a tool in their hand. Whether or not it's effective is kind of up to whoever's running the ambassador program, but it is a perceived tool for sure. Yeah, I agree 100%. I also feel Midnight will be a great contributor to the greater Cardano ecosystem, and I'm really enthusiastic about Midnight. And that's almost enough reason to join. But autonomy is also wonderful. Autonomy is also a wonderful thing. Okay, let's move on a little bit here. So this also happened. So apparently the Midnight whiteboard video that we covered in detail on this channel reached 1.2 million views in 3 days. That's a really good sign, guys. Really good sign. 1.2 million views in 3 days, especially in this climate. I mean, crypto content of any type is getting, like, man, it's like 20% the number of views it would normally get. I mean, I would say if we were in a booming crypto bull rally, if you got 1.2 million views right now in a booming crypto bull rally, that would probably be like 5 million views, 10 million views. It might be 10% of what it would be if things were really booming right now. So, I mean, this is really good. This is a really good sign. If this was summer 2021, that kind of climate, I think this would be 10 million views. So this shows there's a huge amount of interest for Midnight, kind of in line with what we talked about with Zcash. I mean, Zcash is the only ecosystem. It's one of the very few ecosystems that is in this full-on rally like we expected for all of crypto in Q4 2025. Zcash is the only one fulfilling the promise, and it's the privacy thing. Zcash is a Dino coin, just like Cardano, and it's in full rally mode. So this is a really good sign for Midnight. This makes me excited when I see this. This is what I hoped for when we talked about the success of Zcash and whether or not that's a signal, as to how Midnight's going to do. So we'll see. Bindocam says Bindocam is just going to focus short-term efforts into procurement at this stage. Greetings. Greetings. Thank you for joining. Oh, Cardano Universe says almost 2 million now. Good sign. S. Walker says, bro, it's the dark opium den of crypto enthusiasm right now. Yeah, that's kind of true. It does kind of feel like a dark opium den. I think we all feel like, Sherlock Holmes. I think in the original novels, I think Sherlock Holmes spent some time in some opium dens. I think we all sort of feel that way right now. Okay, so this is something important. So speaking of mining, this is important. So we've talked about this on the channel. People brought up, hey, when is the donate to API endpoint going to be enabled? Because I know a lot of people out there are running a huge number of wallets. If you're running like 600 wallets, one of the things you're worried about is that donate to API endpoint, because of exactly what Sebastian's talking about here. He says this new update could save you 50 cents per address. You have less than 5 days to act. So if you're running like 600, 1,000 different addresses, and you have to deposit like 50 cents of ADA in each of them in order to claim your night tokens one day, that's a significant amount of money. So this is probably important to you. So luckily, we've even got a blog from Midnight. If you go to midnight.gd/news, you will find this article from November 11th, how to consolidate allocations from multiple addresses for scavenger mine. And they'll tell you exactly how to do it, step by step by step, generating cryptographic signatures, using the CLI, running the actual API commands, all those good things. You'll have very step-by-step instructions there. You've also got a full video on the @ShieldedBob account. He gives you a step-by-step walkthrough. He's doing it on his Mac here. So he's got like almost a 9-minute video telling you exactly how to do it. However, I know a lot of you are using Patty and Paul's amazingly open source software. I still think they're heroes for open sourcing that. They could have easily just kept that themselves. Instead, they're legends. They just open sourced it. And they're also giving you a very nice and tidy consolidation function inside the software. You might have to update to the latest version of the software, but there are instructions inside their GitHub on exactly how to update the software and not lose the data from your the staking you've done up to this point, and the mining you've done up to this point. I was reading Cardano Universe's comment when I said that staking is the way. I do agree with that in general. So anyways, you can update using their instructions in their GitHub. And then if you didn't already have it, you'll have the consolidation feature as a tab right inside the mining dashboard. And according to Patty and Paul, you can just use that nice, tidy, consolidate all of your addresses that you might have inside that software. So very nice of them to not only open source this software, but also to keep adding features just to kind of help everybody out. So said it too many times, but legends, Patty and Paul, thank you. I can't even says midnight killed my well-loved oldie laptop. I was pretty worried about that, which is why I switched the other day when I said I switched to the, I turned on the Patty and Paul software on a virtual machine on Google Cloud Platform. The thing that made, I was happy that it was mining so well, but also I was happy that I wasn't putting stress on my hardware. So I had a couple of different laptops, an old one that I also love, and my current normal laptop. So happy not to have the wear and tear on the hardware. Mark Going says, speaking of midnight, if you use a single browser, not through API, do you still have to donate to going? Do you still have to donate? So are you addressing the donate to API endpoint, or are you talking about the donation to the developers in Patty and Paul's software? I think you're just talking about the donate to endpoint. So if you're just using a single address, you don't really need all the consolidation function, this donate to API endpoint. This is really for people who have like a lot of wallets. If you're API mining, you probably have a lot of addresses. So this is more for those people. If you just have a single address, I mean, at the end of the day, you're just gonna have to put a little bit of ADA in there to transact on the blockchain to claim your stuff. So if you're just using a single browser with a single address, then you shouldn't need to worry about this address consolidation stuff. Ben Ryan, let's go. Let's go. BindoCam, yep. If you're in the BindoCam situation, I think you're good. And Yulruk, thank you for joining. That's okay. I think everybody just kind of, I think everybody's just kind of getting their comments in here and there as they can. So no worries at all. Why would we want individuals running 1,000 addresses on midnight getting higher percentage than your average honest guy? Seems flawed from the start, rewarding bad behavior. No. So yeah, I mean, I've talked about this several times on the channel. So I think they wanted to make it permissionless. The question is, why did they build the API in the first place? So I think because we don't have proof of human, there's not going to be a metric that's like this many humans were involved in this airdrop. The metrics are going to be how many addresses were involved in this airdrop, and what percentage of the total value of the crypto ecosystem as a whole was involved in the airdrop. We already know that number. It's like 95% of the total value of all of crypto got the airdrop or were eligible for the airdrop. So for the mining portion of this, the scavenger mine, I think the only metric they can really measure, the big metric they can measure is not the only one, but the big one is how many addresses were involved. And if you think about it, allowing AP mining vastly increased the number of addresses involved. So, I mean, call me the guy who's always skeptical, but I would argue that's the reason why the API mining part of this was created, because it's obviously going to it's going to optimize that metric. So, and that's, you can call it a vanity metric if you want, because when you've got one human and 1,000 addresses, it's just it just becomes vanity inflation of that metric, but it's the only metric they can measure. So okay, Patty and Paul released a standalone donate tool today for other miners and browsers. Okay, thank you for seeing that, Skolder. I saw them talking about possibly releasing that today, so this sounds like this is confirmation that they did release that. So there you go. You can use that too. Otis Frichov says, got to cut it short today. Fiat miners mining in the morning to DCA for the next 75 days. Night, fam. Good luck. Good luck. Good luck in the Fiat mines for sure. AOS, you do an awesome job advocating for Cardano. I hope you don't get exposed by CoffeeZilla. I won't get exposed by CoffeeZilla because I have not made any gigantic amounts of money like that from crypto. I think my big hope for making money from crypto is my personal holdings, which, that's why the reason why I fiat mined for the last 2 years instead of just staying in crypto is because I didn't do any of the big extractive things. I didn't do a 10,000K PFP collection, which isn't even something CoffeeZilla would be interested in, but I didn't even do those kind of things. I didn't issue some meme coin. I didn't do a PFP NFT collection. I didn't do any of those extractive things. I just didn't do it. I had the choice. I could have done it. People, other people in similar positions certainly did it last cycle, and some of them made gigantic amounts of money. I know for a fact. But I chose not to do it. Instead, I chose to go back to the dark and gloomy fiat mines because I would rather do that than do anything that I would regret later. So that was an easy choice. I didn't even really consider the two. I was just like, instead of doing something that's highly extractive of the community, I will just go back to the fiat mines. Cardano Universe says my old Dell has crashed 3 times over the last 5 years and keeps repairing itself. I'm grateful. Okay, that's good. Clarity Act also hopefully coming. I'm a little afraid it's not going to come till January. So maybe this liquidity injection will be timed to coincide with, really, it's the Senate market structure bill, whatever they end up calling that. It's just the Senate. It is just the Senate counterpart to the Clarity Act that was passed in the House that Mateo is referencing here. So very nice. Robert Scott, I've mined 1100 on my Mac. Very nice. Good job. Good job. Okay, let's see what else we've got here. So this also happened in Cardano today, and this is not so positive news in my book. So people blame this on various things. I have a little bit different take on this. So this popped up. Investigations by Zach XBT. I regularly have people ask me about, okay, it's not that part. Okay. Investigations by Zach XBT. On-chain clown of the month. I think this is unfortunate. I would not ever address this way if I was this person. I don't think that's fair. Unless it's one of two things. Maybe it is fair if it's the latter thing. But on-chain clown of the month, a Cardano holder swapped 14.4 million ADA, 6.9 million USD for 847K USDA, a Cardano stable pegged to USD 2 hours ago, and lost 6.05 million USD due to low liquidity, causing the price to sharply spike temporarily. Previously, the fund sat dormant for 5 years. So if you have ever used an automated market maker, DEX, if you've ever swapped anything in a liquidity pool, what happened here. Instantly, there's slippage. There's slippage when you use AMM DEXs. It's like the first thing you encounter. If you're on the demands, if you're on the retail user side, the first thing you figure out is that there's slippage, and it's not good for you as the retail user usually. If you're on the liquidity provision side, if you're LPing, the thing you notice is impermanent loss. So on both sides of it, you've got slippage or you've got this impermanent loss, right? Both sides, it kind of sucks. And here what they're talking about is somebody who had held this ADA for 5 years deciding, hey, it's like, let me paint this picture. 5 years ago, you have acquired, 14.4 million ADA, right? You go all the way through all the events of this year and last year, it's like ADA goes all the way up to, what was it, a $1.31 on some exchanges, in the $1.20s on some other exchanges maybe, but it goes all the way up there till your 14.4 million ADA, is worth, you're in the teens. You're like in the teens of millions of dollars, a lot of millions of dollars. You round trip that, you get all the way to the end of 2025, and you see ADA plunge to 48 cents. Super depressed. You can't take the pain anymore. You just decide to YOLO into a sale on some DEX. And you see that there's this stable coin, USDA, and you say to yourself, hey, this is a stable coin. It's always worth $1. So this is easy. I'll just take my profits now. If there were profits involved, I'll turn my 14.4 million ADA into 14.4 million USD minus some fees, minus some DEX fees or whatever. And I'll just, walk. I've had enough of this pain. 48 cents is too much. I'm going to walk. And you do it. You don't know about slippage, or you don't think about slippage, or you don't realize there's going to be slippage because you're dealing with a stable coin, whatever it is, you're not very proficient at using AMM DEXs. So you experience the biggest slippage incident anybody's seen in Cardano in a long, long time, at least, maybe the biggest ever, whatever. And you lose $6 million. That's one possibility, but other people had a different read on this. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. So this is this is the same. This is somebody else with their own sort of rundown of the situation. Here's the actual transactions. So on the other side of this transaction was a user who had the ADA handle belly. And this user with this ADA handle belly did pretty well. They did pretty well. They were sort of on the other side of this whole thing, while the whale, who had had these funds for 5 years, lost 6 million. This other trader belly saw the imbalance that was going on and acted, in the economically rational way, and sort of did the same in a positive direction for themselves. So this belly trader made apparently millions of bucks by acting on the imbalance this caused. Because obviously, if you just kind of like YOLO into a liquidity pool that has limited liquidity with, 7 million, almost 7 million bucks worth of ADA, you're gonna depeg that stable coin in that pool, and it actually depegged basically all the stable coins in all of Cardano. This horrific sort of carnage, and the trader that everybody says sort of acted and benefited from this is this ADA handle belly trader. But of course, everybody is sort of condemning the whale for either one of two things: being super stupid and not realizing these Cardano stablecoins don't have enough liquidity to accommodate such a gigantic trade, which might be the case, or this is possibly some form of money laundering. So if all the people like Belly on the sort of beneficiary side of the kind of warping in the markets that happened because of this giant trade in liquidity pools that didn't have enough liquidity to accommodate the trade, if they're the same person as the whale who traded this initially, you can easily dream up scenarios where this would be like an effective way to launder money, sort of like, but you wouldn't want to just make $1 million on this sort of beneficiary side and lose 7 million on the lose like 7 million on the, or 6 million on the whale side. You would want to lose a much smaller amount in order to accomplish the money laundering. This would be like the least effective money laundering ever if you traded like $7 million worth of illicit funds for $1 million of washed funds. So we don't know what this is. We'll probably never know what this is. But there were some rumors later today. There were some rumors a while after this news hit. There were some rumors. Somebody went back and sort of traced. I saw some references to it. I'm not sure exactly who did it. I can't remember what account posted it, but there were a few people posting that I saw that it looked like the original funds may have come out of the Genesis block of Cardano, which, you know, is going to lead people to jump to the conclusion that maybe this was a mistake. Maybe this was one of the founding entities that was just trying to move some money into stables to sort of preserve a little capital just in case, ADA was going to go much lower, and maybe they just weren't proficient with DEXs and made this huge mistake. So we don't really know at this point, but it's a very notable event in Cardano DeFi. So let's see what people are saying. Dog just said to get out and summon some UFOs. Okay. Where's the ETFs? Yep, I agree with that. I was just joking, but your response was very absolute. Never doubted you for your honesty and legitimacy. Why I am here is because of you. Blessings. No, I mean, I assume you guys are joking when you say stuff like that, but I always, I like to address anything like that. I always want to address that and be super transparent about it. But I get that 99% of the time when people say that, they're joking, including in that case. So no worries at all. People were whinging. Okay. People were whinging that it depegged, completely disrespecting that he tried to swap in a pool smaller than the swap size. What DEX did he do it on? I know at least Min would have a big warning. Wasn't that trader Emergo? We need CF to make some trades like that so they can get defunded and hand over the foundation to more accountable community members. Yeah, I mean, that's the posts I saw, and I wish I can't remember who made those posts that I saw, or if they were copying somebody else or whatever, but the posts I saw, yeah, if those funds did come from the Genesis block, then we would guess that it was one of the founding entities. And I'm sure with a little more forensic analysis, and maybe that's already taken place, that people could kind of figure out which of the founding entities is likely to be. And of course, if I had to guess who it was out of the three founding entities, like IOG would probably be my last guess out of those three. I would guess it was one of the other two, Emergo or CF. So it sounds like maybe people had done enough forensics to figure out which of those two it might have been. Yeah, this is the problem. Yeah, that's why I think if it did happen before there were indications that it was one of the founding entities, I was imagining some whale who just watched it go up to $1.24 or whatever we think the top was, watched it go clear up there, and then round tripped it, like I think many, many, many of us did, and then couldn't take the pain anymore and just traded. But if it was one of the founding entities, maybe they were just hedging a little bit. They wanted to preserve some cash. They just thought, hey, we've got like $7 million here. We've gotten to the point where we think maybe, there's enough danger that this is the end, that we're now going to go into a bear market and we don't see highs again until 2029. If they were sort of trying to hedge against that possibility, you could see them break off, a $6.9 million piece and think like, oh, we're going to swap for USDA, which would make sense because that is the one related with that same founding entity that was named above in the comments. You could see them saying like, okay, we're just going to hedge against this because we, want to have cash on hand during some bear market years for operating expenses. You could imagine this happening for sure. Skolder says, didn't XRP and Doge both get their ETFs recently and it didn't result in any real positive price action? Yeah, I mean, I think this is what I at least fear with all of these things that people are hoping for. Like, people are really excited about the ETFs, and I am too. And people are really excited about, a tier 1 stable coin, and I am too. But do I think it's the panacea for all of the problems that people perceive? I don't think they do. I don't think these kind of events really do what people think they are going to do. I think a lot of times in crypto, we do have buy the rumor, sell the news kind of events. So it's easy to be disappointed in crypto, I think. And Marsh is, I think that's a little tiny emoji, but I think that's the maybe the face palm emoji or the like startled emoji. Yeah, Cardano community is strong. Stepping stones. Yeah. So I mean, what I would say about this, so what's interesting to me about this is, let's say it was one of the founding entities, or let's just say it was a whale, whoever. We don't even need to posit that it was one of the founding entities. But this was certainly a well. If you've got 14.4 million ADA, I'm going to call you a well. But if you have that much ADA and you can make this mistake, what this says to me is that AMM dexes are not it. This is not, if we want to onboard the mainstream to DeFi, AMM dexes are not the way to go, right? It's like, think about this. Can you imagine this having happened on an order book dex? The very first dex in Cardano was an order book dex, and it worked just fine from my perspective. I used it, it worked just fine, right? And you could conceivably do the same thing in order book decks by doing a market order and like literally not looking at the order book, because the UI for order book dexes, the ones that I've used at least, look a lot like sort of the order books on centralized exchanges. These days they have, sort of like the dumbed down version where you can't see the order book. But back in the day, almost every DEX, or almost every centralized exchange you go to, it was just an order book, and you just see both sides of the order book, and you could either place limit orders or market orders. And if you were dumb and you didn't understand how the order book worked, and you just placed a market order, sure, there would be slippage, but it's the kind of slippage where you're just going to tear your order. If it's big and there's not much liquidity in the order book, it's just going to tear through the orders you can see on the supply side of the order book. You can see it right there in all of the UIs that we always had all those years in crypto for the centralized exchanges. You would just see the order book and it would just kind of tear through those orders. And you do that maybe once, and then you would figure out the difference between limit orders and market orders. And you would just be like, okay, I'm going to look at the order book. And if I'm making a small trade and there's plenty of liquidity, maybe I'll do a market order because I know my order is not going to tear through like, 20 positions on the supply side of the order book. But if you're making a big order and you don't want to suffer that slippage, you would just make a limit order. But it's all very, once you have a tiny bit of experience, it's pretty intuitive, how that order book works. But AMM dexes, liquidity pools, like, man, mainstream parties, mainstream individuals who we want to bring into DeFi, they're not going to figure this out. They're not going to figure out AMM dexes. This is some niche stuff that only people who are super into crypto are going to understand and understand now, right? There's a lot of people in crypto who don't even understand how it works. A lot of people in crypto who are crypto people, a lot of them don't even understand why there's slippage in AMM dexes. They don't understand how the liquidity provision works. They don't understand impermanent loss. They don't understand any of that. They just decide to swap and they swap, If that's the case, and we've got whales with $7 million worth of ADA experiencing catastrophic slippage like this, like all-time historic slippage like this that everybody's going to remember for a long time. It's like, if this is the case for a whale like this, grandma's not going to come into crypto and do this. This is the wrong way to go. This is the wrong way to go. So a lot of people are posting, the problem with the AM, not a lot of people, but there are certain posts out there right now that point out the problem with AMM dexes is when you sign the transaction, you're just sort of promising to provide those funds, and you don't really get a promise as to how much you're going to get back. You can't really review that ahead of time. You just sort of execute the swap, and then whatever you get. And sure, you could argue, a sophisticated person who understands how an AMM DEX works is going to look at the size of the liquidity pools and figure out if this is way too big a trade for the liquidity that's available. Sure. But is this at all ready for prime time? Can we onboard the mainstream if this is happening to any kind of Cardano well, let alone a founding entity of the ecosystem? If this is happening to any well that has this amount of ADA, we're not ready for prime time. Crypto DeFi writ large is not ready for the mainstream. We can't even begin to onboard the mainstream if this is what they have waiting for them. This will never work for the mainstream, right? Let alone if it's a founder of the ecosystem having this problem. If either of those two possible parties could have this problem, mainstream is never going to be onboarded to this experience. It's got to get way safer. And yes, I know a lot of AMM dexes will tell you ahead of time, hey, you're gonna suffer extreme slippage. They might give you a warning. They might even tell you and give you an estimate of the amount of slippage you might experience, all those kind of things. But what I would argue is that this structure, this format for a decentralized exchange is not the right format. I would argue the reason why we have this format is because it's more convenient in the account balance world. AMM dexes were built because it's more convenient to do it this way in the account balance world, but Cardano can do it better. Our very first dex was an order book dex. I would argue that's a better format. It's an easier format, right? There's a reason back in the day when you go on Kraken and Coinbase, you could see the order book, right? They didn't show you the order book for their benefit, right? It was for the benefit of the user. It made the user experience better that you could see the order book. That's the reason why order books are called order books and not hidden order books, right? The reason you can see the order book is so you can trade with full knowledge of what's about to happen. And true, you can build that into an AMM DEX and give them communicate better to the user how the AMM DEX is, what's going to happen after you execute your trade. Sure, you could build all that in, but an order book DEX, it's right there. It's right there, right? I don't think this would have happened. It's possible they could have gone to an order book DEX and executed a market order, and the same thing could have happened if they were really stupid. But I would argue it's harder to make this mistake when the order book is displayed right there in front of you. It's harder to do this. I would argue that AMM dexes are not it for onboarding the mainstream. You're not going to get normal people to ever come and use dexes like this if whales or founding entities are having this problem. This is not it. This is not the way you onboard the mainstream. It's not going to work. We got to go in the other direction. And it makes sense. I get why everybody built AMM dexes because that's the standard in the account balance world. And the account balance world is the standard in DeFi, but we can do better. This is a chance for us to do better. So I would argue the other format, order book dexes, which we actually can conveniently do in Cardano, I would argue that's better for mainstreaming the masses, onboarding the masses. And true, the ultimate, probably the most optimal thing for onboarding the masses is if the, if a DEX actually just looks super dumbed down, kind of like you're using the base Coinbase where you can't see anything, and it just tells you, hey, you're going to get this amount back and pay this much in fees. This is exactly how it's going to work. Even that experience is better than the experience that resulted in this trade. Even that is better. So of course, the other explanation is that this was money laundering. Sure, maybe, that's obviously not the case. If it was one of the founding entities, they would not be engaging in that. So I think this is a good example of how we've gone in the wrong direction in DeFi, though. I don't think anybody looks at this and says, yeah, that's going to work. Everybody's grandma is going to be using DeFi, with this experience. Nobody's saying that. Okay. Okay, Cardano Universe is pointing out that a lot of the development in Cardano is being copied by their blockchains. And they don't give recognition to Charles if it's something he's built out. That's definitely happened. He points it out every time it happens, and it seems happening quite frequently. Then only onboarding should be used for AMM DEX. I'm not sure I understand. Yeah, I mean, so DEXs are great. DEXs, yeah, I will take a decentralized exchange over a centralized exchange any day. The argument is whether we're doing it correctly, whether the architecture is optimal for actually onboarding people, or if it's too niche and requires too much familiarity. The question is the learning curve too steep? Is it too complicated to onboard the masses? I would argue this shows us it is too complicated. But yeah, for all of us, we're so deep in the niche of crypto. All of us, if you've ever even heard of this channel, you're already super deep inside a niche that's called Cardano, inside the bigger crypto niche. You're not at all, if you've even heard of this channel, you're not at all part of the mainstream, right? You're already super deep in a niche and way ahead of everybody else. So that's what I'd argue about that. Okay. So yeah, I mean, it's great. It's great for Belly, the trader who benefited from all this. Maybe there were other people too. It's great for them, but I don't think that's the important part. I think the important part is it shows that what we've built in DeFi is not configured for the mainstream yet. It's like it's so niche. It's so much for insiders. It's an example of this thing that happens a lot. I think you can build systems and add arbitrary complexity, right? You can add any level of complexity to a system. And what happens a lot is we end up building systems, and I don't even just mean in crypto, I just mean humans end up building systems that are overly complicated, that reward insiders who are very familiar with the ins and outs of the system. I think we've done that a little bit in DeFi. We knew we could create systems of arbitrary complexity, and we chose complex systems because they optimize certain things, but they also benefited the familiarity of insiders. So insiders tend to eat newcomers in a lot of the systems we built in crypto. The newcomers get eaten by the insiders. That's great for the insiders, really bad for mainstream adoption, really bad for new people coming in, right? If you get eaten by the veterans, the people who've been there a while as a newcomer, it's really bad. Other newcomers don't want to come in if they see the newcomers ahead of them getting eaten by the people who've been there a while. I think to some extent we've done that in DeFi, and this is nothing against the people. I think it's like the people who've built AMM dexes in Cardano. I really appreciate their efforts and their contributions to Cardano. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying anything bad about them. I'm glad they built AMM dexes. Everybody who built AMM dexes in Cardano, I'm glad they built those dexes and their contribution was really important. I'm just saying we need to evaluate if that's the best format for a dex given this incident. I think this incident makes it clear that the complexity of the systems we built is too high for mainstream adoption. Sure, you could use the same architecture under the hood and make it really simple for newcomers, make it feel like that Coinbase experience where you say, hey, I have $1,000. I want to buy X coin, and then Coinbase tells you like, okay, cool. If you execute your trade right now, you're only going to get, this much of that coin because we have a spread and we also charge some fees. And with all the fees and the spread and everything, you're actually only going to get 600 of that coin. Cool with that. And then you hit OK and execute the trade. I'm sure we could build these dexes with that kind of experience on top of it, but that's not the direction we've gone. And I would argue, maybe order book dexes with that on top of it, or even better. So anyways, morning, Cruncha 9930. Good morning. Thank you for joining from England. Yep, a lot of people propose that the DEX should just reject the trade if there's too much slippage. A lot of people offer that. Coin 6470 says, seems we're the only ones that did not realize the emperor has no close. What are you referencing? What part of that are you referencing? Sub-Zero says, why provide liquidity, whatever that means, just stake for 3% ADA and no risk while staking too. Yeah, I mean, that's my argument. That's part of my argument as to why we don't have a greater TVL in Cardano, because the staking's so good. It's like, why take the risk? Sure, you could get more yield doing certain things in DeFi and Cardano, but you also take on more risk. And the staking in Cardano is pretty attractive given the low amount of risk, at least so far. Seems we've experienced very low risk in Cardano staking. Cardano Universe says, this is why I said before that limits on sizes of trades must happen, like leverage dexes cause problems. Yeah, yeah, we haven't even addressed leverage, right? And this mistake didn't even involve leverage. I haven't seen any leverage seems not to have been involved in this at all. This was just the person executing the swap not understanding how much slippage was going to take place, right? Oh, thank you, Adam. If you try to get my name out there, I appreciate that very much. Thank you. I'm sure there's lots of people trying to shill stuff on those videos that get a lot of views like that. So they probably built in certain filters. It probably tripped some filter, but I appreciate you trying to do that, man. I appreciate that very much. We need changes to stabilize all exchanges, including Binance, etc. Too high for mainstream. Isn't that the majority? Cardano should be for all. Yeah, no, that's how I feel. I feel like we're in this stage of crypto where we're building a lot of niche products for ourselves, right? There's a lot of products in crypto that all of us crypto people get really excited for, but ultimately we don't want to be this little echo chamber where, everybody in crypto gets excited for a new crypto product and there's actually no new people coming in to use it. And a lot of us in crypto have been around for a while. If you notice, especially this cycle, people have commented on it on this channel in recent videos. People have been talking about how it feels like we don't have a lot of young people coming in this cycle, whereas in past cycles, that was a huge part of what happened. And I think part of it is because right now when new people come in, they get burned so hard in crypto. It's like, the YOLO into the latest meme coin, and then they get dumped on by the project runners. They try to do stuff in DeFi and they get eaten alive by people who understand the nuances, involved in whatever platform it is. It's like those types of systems, this is common in TradFi, right? In TradFi, why is it that, Wall Street players can make so much crazy money, at the expense of retail? It's because also in TradFi, they knew they were able to build systems of arbitrary complexity. And what they ended up doing was building very complex systems, so complicated, famously it was said that nobody actually understood some of the stuff that was going on during the real estate bubble, the credit default swaps and some of the math and things that were going on there. It got so complicated and so many fantasy baseball bets on fantasy baseball bets, and so far abstracted from the actual assets. It got so complicated, nobody actually understood what was going on. So TradFi already gave everybody a blueprint for building these extremely complicated systems, and only the insiders understand them enough to not get eaten alive. So the insiders end up eating everybody else alive. We've kind of copied that to some extent in crypto, I think, unfortunately. Mallow, thank you for joining. Morning. Will a regular person understand the terms? Yeah, they don't even understand the nomenclature, right? Go to a regular person, go to a non-crypto person and ask them if they know what slippage is in a DEX. They don't know what you're talking about. They have no idea what a DEX is, let alone slippage. They don't even know what liquidity is. People in crypto don't even know what liquidity is. I get into Cardano, but all of this with glaciers, midnight scavenger dust is absolutely too complicated. Yeah, it's like, this is the phenomenon I'm talking about. It's like you don't onboard people when you build systems so complicated that every newcomer gets eaten by the people who are very familiar by the veterans. That's not how you onboard new people. I don't buy anything until clarity comes out, just stake and earn rewards. Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same situation. I don't buy anything either. I'm just chilling and waiting for the good times. I can't even says will not serve the most vulnerable people in Africa. Yeah, I mean it's too, the DeFi we've built out is too complicated for people in the highly industrialized countries to understand. It's like you're not going to take somebody, you know, you're not going to take somebody, from any other country on earth and have them understand it more. You know what I mean? It's like it's not going to work. These have been bloody days, but we've got hope. We've got some hope. So this stream is a little bit of the good with the bad. I would contend we've sort of built in the wrong direction. We've built for ourselves. We've built products that we want to use. Crypto has built products that crypto wants to use in DeFi. And we really, if we want to onboard the mainstream, we need to build products that are suitable for the mainstream. And AMM DEXs so far are not it. So this also happened. So I referenced this earlier. So Daily Dose, this account posted Cardano founder Charles Hoskinson and Scaramucci's firm invest in Trump-linked American Bitcoin in a 220 million round. And then Charles confirmed it. He said, mining is good business thanks to AI. Bitcoin mining pays for the data center and infrastructure. AI absorbs it in 3 to 5 years. This team gets it and will make serious cash. So Charles has admitted that his Wave Financial thing he built out, he didn't build out Wave Financial, but Wave Financial, and he built out the C Fund. And he admits that maybe, I think in a recent video, he said, I am not a good investor, or I am not a good VC. He said something like that. So I don't think people should take this as like a sign of what's good to put money into, because Charles himself, seems to, have criticism of his own performance as, part of the C Fund. But what I think is interesting here is that this is an investment. But if you're a skeptical guy like me, you'd also say this is a form of lobbying almost, right? So if you wanted to get in the good graces of that family that is also linked to the current White House administration, investing in a business that the sons are involved in, probably not bad for you, right? It's probably not bad for your relationship with the current White House administration if you're invested in the business that the two sons have created inside crypto. So I would argue that this is probably good. Charles's investment here, who knows how the investment will pan out for him, but is this probably good for this ecosystem's relationship with the current White House? Probably good. Probably not bad for us to have the founder of the ecosystem involved in this investment. So I would argue this is actually kind of a lobbying activity. So BindoCamp says the core can be complicated, but as long as others facilitate pathways to utilize it, they won't have to care about these innards eventually. Yeah, I mean, you could argue we're going to build, simpler user experiences on top of the same, under the hood mechanics, and maybe that'll solve the problem. That's possible. So this is an interesting comment. This is what I normally see. I think this is actually an accurate representation of what happens. So M. Marsh says, I like to try out all the stuff instead of just staking, but you do lose a load of ADA doing it. I think I've heard this a million times. I've heard this a million times from a million people, because people are intellectually curious. They want to see what it's like to LP, on a DEX, to swap on a DEX. And a lot of people are like, oh, I'm super glad I did that. I learned some things about slippage and impermanent loss and those kind of things. But man, I paid for it. I lost a little ADA. This is what I hear. Every newcomer kind of gets eaten alive by the level of complexity we've built into current DeFi. And if everybody has the same experience you had, like, we're crypto insiders, we can withstand it and just learn from it and figure out how to do it correctly and not lose a load of ADA every time we do it. But the mainstream, they just won't come. if that's the reputation that DeFi has, that you lose a ton of money just by trying it, they're not going to come. The mainstream herd will not show up if that's the experience. Okay. Scolder says Cardano isn't for everyone to make a buck. There's no principles or equality in that. It's there to serve as the settlement layer for social, political, financial. Some of us have made an abomination. I would argue this is correct. It's, it's like, I mean, there's something to be said for Charles is always going back to, it's not don't be evil. We need to put in place can't be evil. I think that's certainly correct. It has to be can't be evil. And to some extent, it's I don't think most these things that we're talking about here, these DeFi platforms at Cardano, I don't think there was any evil intent. I think the way things ended up getting built out has bad consequences for new people. That's the way I would put it. But I agree with what you're saying here. It's like it shouldn't be this system where everybody just tries to make their buck. If everybody just tries to make their buck, you kind of have this tragedy of the commons, where everybody's making their buck, but no new people can come in because everybody's taking, their, pound of flesh out of every newcomer. Like that system doesn't produce. That's a tragedy of the commons. It doesn't produce the adoption we need. People are attacking each other heavily on X. It's a war zone on X. Who's attacking each other? Who's attacking each other on X right now? So AOS, what's the answer? Honestly, if the most vulnerable cannot grasp this, what is the way forward there other than the ones who know exit on those who do not and enrich themselves? So I think we just need to build out, if we want people to use DEXs, we need to build out DEXs that are simpler. I think an order book DEX is simpler. It's a little bit easier to see what's going on in an order book DEX. I think even simpler than that is if you have the same experience as the dumbed down version of centralized DEXs, because a lot of centralized DEXs went through this phase. Originally, you could just see the order book on every centralized DEX. And then they went through this phase, like Coinbase had this thing called GDAX, and all of a sudden the order book was on GDAX. And then on Coinbase proper, that wasn't GDAX, you could just, it was just like, you could be like, oh, I have $1,000 in my account right now. If I buy ADA, what do I get? And then the platform would tell you like, oh, we're going to take out the following amount in fees and spread. And so you're only going to get this amount of ADA, but if you want that, just hit okay. And so people would know ahead of time when they hit that button, they know exactly how much they're going to get. That's the current. So eventually GDAX became Coinbase Pro, but the current experience on Coinbase, if you just go to coinbase.com and you don't go to any of this stuff, I don't even know what they're calling Coinbase Pro these days, but if you just do the normal Coinbase experience, you just get that push button experience. Like, hey, we're going to take some money from you in the form of fees and spread, and here's how much actual ADA you're going to get. Even if we had that kind of experience where people were guaranteed to, they just had notification, they just had disclosure. What we're really talking about is disclosure here, right? And it's not, I'm not saying that anybody at the DEX is doing this. It's just the DEX itself, the decentralized platform itself is doing this to people. And I think people don't care that it's the decentralized platform doing this to them. I think they care about the experience, and whether it's a person or the decentralized platform doing it to them, they don't care. They just know they had a bad experience because of slippage or impermanent loss or whatever, right? People aren't going to use it. The mainstream's not going to use it if that's the experience. So I think order book DEX is better for people, writ large, just like people as a group, because a lot of them aren't going to be sophisticated enough to ever understand, AMMs. I think order books are better, and probably even better than that for the true mainstream is just that experience where they get told, hey, you're going to lose this much, but you push this button and here's exactly how much you're going to get. Maybe that's impracticable even on an order book DEX, because you could argue, it's permissionless if it's really a decentralized exchange, and other people might execute orders in the order book. If there's decent volume, that is going to be the case. Other orders are going to get executed. But even in that Coinbase experience, the number changes as you sit there and hover before you hit, execute the trade button. The number is constantly changing. They're constantly telling you like, oh, now you only get, 639 ADA. Now you only get 637 ADA. So it's got to be something that looks like that. And even if we can only achieve 80% of that, that's better than the current experience where you can literally lose $6 million. This, maybe you lose $6 million experience because you don't understand liquidity in an AMM DEX. That's not going to cut it. That's what I'm saying. Okay. If you buy Cardano, essentially you are funding building it or gambling or less likely using it to pay tax fees on legit things. Yeah, that's true. That's true of crypto ecosystems. In a way, if you buy Cardano, you are sort of supporting the price, and the people who are building out the ecosystem are, benefiting from your support of the price, so they can sell at a slightly higher price because of your purchase, basically. So yeah, that's true. And you're hoping when you buy it, you're hoping that the whole thing, this whole food chain works out, so the stuff they build makes the ecosystem more valuable, that kind of thing. So yeah, okay. So I'll normally I don't address this too much because I don't like the discussion to get too meta about the channel. But what's going on right now is that the appetite for crypto media is so much lower. Like I talked about earlier, with respect to Charles's whiteboard 2.0 video getting the over 1 million views. Somebody reported it's approaching 2 million now. Last cycle, that 2 million number probably would have been 10 million, just like this channel was getting way more views in the last cycle. It's just the demand for crypto related content is much, much lower this cycle because retail hasn't shown up yet. Retail hasn't been a part of this cycle so far. So the demand for content is just way, way lower. So have I ever seen Back to the Future 2? That's the one where Marty McFly actually goes to the future. I saw it once when it came out back in the day. So I saw it like one time back in the day when it came out, but we were all very, very excited for that when all of media was like centralized and there were only like a few, like people really only watched, a few network TV channels on TV, and we all went to go see the same movies in the movie theater in North America. Movies like that were a much bigger deal. It's like we would all be anticipating the movie for a long, long time. And when it would come out, everybody would be talking about it. It was a really big deal. So yes, I saw it back in the day. And it was like movies like that were a very different thing back in the day. They were a much bigger deal. Okay. I can't even, says I feel for my African brethren. I don't know what to do to balance the scales. I think we just need to build out, RealFi needs to be built out in a way that works for RealFi. And I hope that's what John O'Connor and those guys are doing. I hope that's exactly what they're doing. I hope they're building out DeFi as part of RealFi that works for, the purposes that have kind of been set out for RealFi. So hopefully that's actually happening. I hope that's actually happening. And dude, John O'Connor seems like a very capable guy. So I'm very optimistic. I'm looking forward to seeing what they're building. TradFi gets just as many wrecked when people start venturing outside their knowledge set. For sure. TradFi is exactly the same thing. They've built systems of a complexity level that, retail is just kind of fodder. Retail is just kind of cannon fodder for sure in a lot of cases. Thomas Kirkpatrick, thanks for joining. Thanks for joining. It's a wild casino. It sure is. Pucky Hawk says, I just got X, and the only war I've had is with Grok. We have had words laugh out loud. Definitely some of the funniest experiences, like with AI, chatting with AI, or when AI says something that you take you take exception to, like when you disagree with what AI is telling you. This is definitely some of the funniest interactions. It's a blame game in the politics section. Oh, you're saying the war is in yeah, always. I mean, we're in an era where politics is basically like open warfare for sure. The more efficient Cardano gets with Hydra input endorsers, etc., the less the fees, the lower the value of ADA. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I think so. Luckily, I think I think you can make a persuasive case. So I think you can make a persuasive case that the value of a crypto ecosystem these days is not based fully on the potential of fee collection, right? I mean, just like the value, the market cap of an AI company is currently not 100% correlated to their revenue. So I think there's other things that determine the value of a crypto ecosystem. So it's sort of like we used to talk a lot in the past in crypto. We used to talk a lot about different DAOs and when they were going to turn on the fee switch. And it's sort of like what we figured out when they would turn on the fee switch, what we figured out is that the value of a lot of ecosystems, whether it's a small DAO that runs a DeFi platform or something else, or it's a full blockchain ecosystem like Cardano, I think what we figured out is that the value of the ecosystem is not entirely correlated with the fees. Maybe it should be. You could also make a persuasive argument that we're messing that part up, that that's a mistake, and we should just correlate the value to the fees. You could make that argument, but I think what we've seen is that in fact, the value is based on multiple things, and some of them go beyond the fees, even the potential for fee collection, really. Yeah, Delta DeFi. Yeah, so I covered that on the channel the other night. Delta DeFi is an order book DEX. So running on Hydra, which is a state channel. So I can't even says, keep up the good work, and hopefully someday reality will catch up with all. It's not like it's told. Those disenfranchised can keep believing in the hope. It's all that has ever been. Yeah, I have a lot of hope. I have a lot of hope for what crypto is going to do. I'm very optimistic about what crypto is going to do, and even what RealFi in Cardano is going to do. I have very high hopes for those things. Yep. And Rojo Ohm says ADA is fixed supply, deflationary. A big part of my thesis, if ADA was not a fixed supply, I probably never would have gotten involved in Cardano, to be honest with you. If ADA from the start had been like, yeah, we're going to follow Ethereum's lead, and we're not going to have a fixed supply, I probably never would have gotten involved, for sure. I can't even says Cardano felt like a possibility for the disenfranchised. However, now you have terms like midnight scavenger hunt. Let me know which African in a poor village participated in it. Yeah, I mean, we've got things in crypto that are very niche, and they're not really related to that original crypto ethos, right? It's like we've got things in crypto that are very much about sort of capital accretion, like asset accretion, that feel very disconnected from the original cypherpunk ethos of crypto. That's for sure. And I think a lot of those niche things, like I think if we are to have permissionless ecosystems, and I think Cardano very much is a permissionless ecosystem, then all of that, asset accretion stuff, it has to go on, because if anytime anything's permissionless, people are going to do stuff to make money. There's no, that's just like capitalism. That stuff's going to go on, but I think you're right. We can't lose track of the original cypherpunk stuff that would, do the whole creating a more level economic playing field for the entire world thing. I think we've got to keep that. If we lose that, then we've definitely lost something. And at the same time, I think all the hyper capital accretion stuff, it has to be able to go on, because if it's not going on, we probably don't have a permissionless ecosystem. So I think they both have to exist, but I think you're right. We can't really lose sight of the original cypherpunk stuff. Yeah, the value is in the network. Um, there's value in the DC. If it was just fee collection, then you could argue that we should have gone in the direction of Solana. If we were just optimizing fees, then you would sacrifice a lot of decentralization for fees currently. But I agree. There's value in decentralization. I think that's one of those things beyond fees that has value. Um, good things take time. Yep. There you go. Mission Zambia says, I'm scavenger mining in Zambia. Yep. Yep. Absolutely. So there you go. Scavenger mining in Africa, in Zambia. I wish they would restart the peer-to-peer payment research. Yeah, I don't know what the end state of that would look like. I don't actually have like a clear picture of what peer-to-peer payment, because I feel like if you just look at those words, if you just look at those words, if you think about the layman's interpretation of those words, peer-to-peer payment, I would argue from a layman mainstream perspective, we have that right now in Cardano, because I can certainly pay anybody. I can do a basically a peer-to-peer payment from the perspective of a layperson. Sure, it has to get validated, all those things, but we can do that right now in crypto pretty well, especially in Cardano. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think going back to the days of the 2021 September Cardano Summit at University of Wyoming, back then we did say things like, I can't wait till smart contracts have been in Cardano for 3 years, for 5 years. Like, what is that going to look like? It seemed amazing at the time. And we ran into a lot of problems, like the Plutus application backend not really being built out, people having a lot more trouble, I would say our ecosystem having a lot more trouble fielding enough, functional programming developers who could do Haskell, and then, finally getting things like Aiken. Um, there were a lot of things that slowed us down, but I would also argue we've built out a lot of things since then. Like, there's so much more in this ecosystem than we had back in those days. Um, the advent of Goguen, things haven't gone as quickly as a lot of us, would have hoped, of course, but we have built out, there's so much more in the ecosystem now than there was back then. Beamer House says, feels like Cardano native tokens are slowly dying. I mean, kind of to the extent I would expect. If you had told me 2 years ago, in November 2023, or even 2.5 years ago, at any point, in the lows, in those 2 years out of the 4-year cycle, when crypto either isn't being the worst asset in the world or the best asset in the world, the 2 years when it just kind of like does nothing and is flat at the bottom. If you had told me that ADA would be at 48 cents in November 2025, I would have been shocked. But if you'd asked me in the next breath, what would be the status of CNTs, I would be like, very bad. Things would look very bad for CNTs. In a world where ADA is at 48 cents, yes, things are going to look very, very bad for CNTs. And part of it is just their subsidiary nature. They are subsidiary to ADA in the sense that they're always going to be downstream from ADA. So if things and any negativity is going to be because their market caps are so much smaller. Any negativity is going to be amplified. They're further out on the risk curve. So if people are retracting capital from ADA because CNTs are downstream from ADA, it's like, yeah, I would have guessed in 2023 or 2022 that if ADA is at 48 cents, CNTs are going to be looking like they're on their last leg. Yeah, it's going to be looking bad. Not on their last leg, really, but just looking real bad for CNTs. Skolder says decentralization and the network is definitely valuable, but that does not translate to ADA increasing in value or more money. For now, I would say for now. um, it was that a proof could be stored on 2 non-network devices and one could submit to chain once online. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, when we talk about peer-to-peer anything, like even when we started talking about peer-to-peer communication between nodes, um, it's technically it's a marvel. Does it make a difference for mainstream adoption? Probably not, because they're not going to understand the difference between the kind of peer-to-peer activities you're describing and what they would think of as peer-to-peer payments, which is just one address being able to send to another one, which we've had kind of from the birth of Cardano, really, right? So I get what you're saying. It's for all of us inside Cardano who are super deep in this niche. It's like very interesting technically for us to think about this kind of thing, but it's like, just to go back to the bigger theme of the stream, it's not even distinguishable for the mainstream from what they would call peer-to-peer payments. They don't even understand what this is when they hear the words peer-to-peer. They think they already have it. And what you're describing is something that's much more technically nuanced that they're never going to understand. So, which is also valuable to us as insiders, but it's like it does go to the greater theme again. Yeah, that was September 2021 when we were on the cusp of Goguen. That was the time when Goguen was hitting us. Smart contracts were hitting us, and we were at that amount. Yeah. Um, I think it's so easy for Bitcoin Jesus and others to make claims on how it is liberating people. However, the people that the reference do not seem so liberated, do they? I mean, even Bitcoin Jesus ended up in jail in Spain, was it? Yeah, Roger Ver ended up in jail in Spain, for quite a long time. There's an interesting documentary you can watch about that. So I think a lot of people inside crypto proper didn't end up with the amount of liberty they would have hoped for, recently. So, there are 20,000 tokens dying on Coinbase. Yeah, I mean, it's all of crypto. It's not, yeah, this is a good point. It's not even Cardano. It's just all of crypto for sure. Okay, Thomas Kirkpatrick says, I wrote up a proposal for a unidirectional treasury, ADA to USD stable, that would have replenished the treasury and could add liquidity as needed to avoid what happened today. That was 2 years ago. So yeah, I'm not familiar with the specific proposal, or I can't remember it. Maybe I was aware of it when you wrote it up. But I can't remember the specifics of your particular proposal. I do remember those proposals, the various versions of those kinds of proposals that have existed. And yeah, I agree with you. Like, I think optimally, we would all have wanted for there to be more liquidity in 2025. I don't think any of us imagined this kind of like insufficient liquidity leading to this kind of event in November 2025. This is definitely not what any of us hoped for sure. So, and you make a good point. The proposals like the one you mentioned having written up would, obviously are meant to fix the exact problem that caused this. I would argue one of the problems, like the underlying mechanical issue, is the lack of liquidity. But I would also argue that we've architected our decentralized exchanges in such a way that the mainstream is not going to be able to use them for this same reason. You have to be, just like the knowledge about liquidity you have to have is like too high for the mainstream. So we talked about that pretty extensively earlier in the stream. So I know you came in later. So, okay. At Cardano says, hey guys, speaking of running late, haven't seen sentiment look this bad since COVID. Hope everyone's doing okay out there. Yeah, go back and watch the start of this video. I think there is, possibly a ray of hope. There's a ray of hope. Puggy Hawk says it's a Black Friday sale. Yep. Yeah, I think sentiment in here is pretty good. Yeah, sentiment in here is pretty good, I think. So Pucky Hawk says, I'm buying all kinds of stuff. Yep. I think this is if you heed the advice to buy when there is blood in the street, if you think that is a wise philosophy, and I'm not saying it's good or bad philosophy, but yeah, now feels like the kind of time that little saying relates to, right? I can't even, says I'm living it, so I can really speak to it. I think most crypto holders are not realistic, other than the fact that they want to make $1 over the belief this is a saving grace. Yeah, there's a lot of people in crypto right now who just want to make $1. That's for sure true. Yep, a lot of people are agreeing with Pucky Hawk's approach there. Okay, Skolder says, I imagine that's all Cardano will be used for in the future. Settlements, proofs, records, not collectibles. I think other partner chains and data availability layers will serve that purpose. Yeah, I mean, this is originally what I sort of envisioned when I talked about the layerverse all those years ago, that you're going to want different compromises on the blockchain, trilemma, now quadlemma, if you include privacy. You're going to want different compromises on the legs of that trilemma or quadlemma. If you are just trying to do, if you want to have different layers that address different things, like collectibles, you might have a layer in the Cardano layerverse that's just for collectibles, and you may want very different things than you do on the base layer for settlement, for sure. Maybe Trump decided to put crypto on sale for Thanksgiving. It sure feels that way. Somebody, I don't know who, but somebody decided to put it on sale for sure. Reality is it will change things in the end and will uplift the disenfranchised, but not until the privileged have benefited. Also feels that way. Yep. I agree with this. The magic can only happen when all the normies aren't broke, though. I agree with that. Yeah, retail has not shown up, and part of it may be that that retail is broke. That's for sure a possibility. Thanks, Do Not You. Thanks for saying that. I appreciate it. Appreciate you saying that. All of this is far from mainstream, unfortunately. Yep. We've also talked about that. This is the kind of stuff we talk about on channels like this are so niche compared to what the mainstream is going to be interested in. This is all super, super niche compared to what the mainstream can even understand. Kai, I hope you're right. Kai Pearson, I hope you are correct about that. I hope blockchain ends up being extremely valuable. I hope it does. Cardano says Cardano has NFTs. Yep. It feels that way right now. Not a lot of NFT stuff going on. Adam says the vampires of the new world are trying to Rothschild your tokens. Yeah, yeah, a lot of people saying things like that. It feels like some deep cabal is manipulating the crypto ecosystem to create those discounts so they can buy at these deep Black Friday discounts. It feels that way, doesn't it? Yeah, I hope so. I hope we tokenize everything. I hope we tokenize everything, and the worth of everything is just the market cap of those tokens, right? I hope if somebody has an office building, in wherever, downtown LA, I hope it's tokenized, and we only know the value of that office building by the market cap of those tokens. That'd be great. I'd be okay with that. Brian says, I've been in Cardano since 2017, still having problems with dexes like Wing Riders. I can't imagine mainstream coming in without a help desk. Yep, I agree. It's too complicated. It's too complicated. When even the insiders are having trouble, it's way too complicated. Okay, Liz, your pimp says CMC says the Cardano treasury stalled withdrawals. Is that true? I don't know about that. I don't know. I haven't heard anything about that. Someone would have to confirm that for me, or I'd have to I'd have to see that with my own eyes. I don't know about that. But when you say the Cardano treasury stalled withdrawals, it's like, what withdrawals are you talking about? Just the ones we approved in the budget? If so, maybe it's because, there's a bunch of procedural reasons that could be the case. If you're just talking about the withdrawals that were approved in the budget, it could be a lot of procedural reasons why that might be temporarily, paused or something. I don't know. Tell us about that, Scolder. How much have the JPEG store fees increased? I'd like to hear about that. Dorian, good morning. Good morning. Yep, still alive. Yeah, we're going a little longer tonight. There's I think there are some interesting big macro things we had to talk about tonight, and there was a very interesting event inside Cardano. If you go back and listen to the earlier parts of this live stream, you're going to hear some, interesting things from both within and without of Cardano. Cardano versus I'm making a poster out of my own NFT. Are you talking about a Volvo thing having to do with Cardano or just Volvo in general? Okay, so I tried, Danil. I knew you were also using the Patty bot because you were commenting about this when Patty announced it. I tried to download the latest version and use the consolidation button, and I think I've messed something up because mine wouldn't quite consolidate correctly. I'm sure that's just my own user error, but it sounds like you're having maybe similar problems. Yeah, the consolidation did not, when I hit that button, it didn't go the way I thought it would. So I'm not sure if I don't think it worked. I don't think it's worked yet, but I'm going to try more. I'm going to try more later. Okay. Okay. Kai Pearson, when trustless things get applied or combined with big tech, that will be worth. Oh, worth. Like worth money, not worth. I thought, I was like, are we talking about the one guy on Star Trek? Or were you referencing the dude on Star Trek? I didn't know what you were talking about there. Okay. And by the way, when I read your comments back, I'm obviously reading them, because of the way YouTube filters streams sometimes, the way they, deal with streams and certain words. Trust me, in normal everyday speech, I would just read exactly what you guys wrote. So it's not any kind of like refusal on my part to read exactly what you guys wrote. I'm just trying to, accommodate YouTube in the way they will deal with videos depending on if certain words are included. So that's the only reason. But okay, when trustless things get applied or combined with big tech, that will be worth some money. Totally agree. Totally agree. When big tech actually adopts crypto the way they're going to have to, in my opinion, that's going to be crazy. Never used Wing Rider. I've used MinSwap and Sunday Swap. Oh yeah, Dorian. Yeah. There will be some interesting stuff. I think there were some interesting topics today. You probably already saw them. You probably saw the same interesting topics already in just kind of your normal perusal of Cardano X. But you probably already know exactly which topics we discussed earlier in the stream for sure. Did you pull the latest? I did. I pulled the latest version out of the GitHub, and I had some problems. Yeah, I don't know. It's probably user error. It's some kind of user error though, for sure. At Cardano says consolidate manually. If I can do it, anyone can. Did you do it with the? Did you do it following the instructions on the Midnight News blog? Is that how you did it? Pucky Hawk says, I just asked Super Grok when Bitcoin will go up again, and it told me to sit tight and don't panic. Laugh out loud. Sounds like that might be that sounds like it might be good advice. Tim Draper and Global, just generally, not necessarily saying it's good advice in this case because I don't know, but sit tight and don't panic is just in life in general, I think has been good advice for me, for myself. Um, Tim Draper and global leaders from MasterCard, Volvo, and the UN joined the Cardano Summit 2025 in Berlin to, oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know about I don't know about this. I know Tim Draper. He's kind of, Draper Academy. I think who was it? The CF or someone put up some money for there to be a special Cardano part of, like Draper Academy or something. So he's had some dealings with Cardano before, and I believe that was the CF previously. So it makes sense that somebody from the Draper organization would be at the CF summit. So that makes sense. Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought it was a reference to Wharf for sure. The story being told is crypto is freedom for all, freedom for your rights, and it is easy to claim other places without freedom and say you just hold BTC and you'll be good. We are waiting. Yep. Thanks for saying that, Kai Pearson. I've actually done episodes on this channel where I just speak like I normally do. And literally people sent me private messages and they were like, "Hey bro, listen, I listen to you while I'm carpooling my small children to work." And they like learned some new words while I was carpooling them. So so I try not to. That's part of the reason, but the other part is because YouTube YouTube doesn't like the way I speak in real life. They're not as friendly toward that as 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 I would hope. Uh, Volvo is joining other major companies like Mastercard and Orange Business to discuss how blockchain technology can be used in business. Good. I hope so. I hope so. Thank you, Pucky Hawk. I appreciate that. Did you build the code? I sort of downloaded it and did everything that Patty had the update. He had an update file in the GitHub, and I did everything he said to do in the update file. I'm sure there was some user error, but I did all the things he said to do in that update file. So maybe I'm sure it's some user error. I did something wrong. I didn't build something I was supposed to for sure. But I literally only spent like 10 minutes on it before I had to jump on this before I had to do some things to get ready for this live stream. So I wasn't able to like spend a lot of time. I just kind of like followed the instructions in that update file, kind of quickly. I wasn't like super detail oriented. So I'm sure I made some mistake. How about you? Did it work for you? Did the consolidate function work for you? Pucky Hawk says, that's why I'm here. I don't mind or anything, but I do have a lot of Cardano. That's probably, yeah. I mean, according to, if any of my bets are correct, which they may or may not be, then, that seems like a good position to be in. So, okay, JP Riggs says Mecha Labs just did an airdrop to their community on Cardano. I have no idea who Mecha Labs is. Can you tell us who Mecha Labs is? Okay. Skokak Maine says, new here. Hi to all. Charles is currently 100% focused on Midnight. The Cardano Foundation is trying to do something, but it's far from what they should be doing. We still don't have stable coins. I think Charles is definitely, there's a lot of focus on Midnight for sure. He's launching a whole new blockchain, albeit a partner chain of Cardano, but still it's a whole new blockchain really. So yeah, I think that's probably taken up a huge amount of his attention for sure. Rulo says, I will always leave a bit of TVL in Wing Riders. I will never forget they saved MinSwap. Yeah. This is something that gets forgotten. This is a really interesting detail. If you don't know about this, we won't go into I covered it heavily on this channel. I shouldn't say heavily, but I covered it in detail on this channel. So I won't bore everybody who's already heard the story, but this is an interesting event that may have gotten lost in the annals of Cardano history, but this is something that happened. You can search for this on X, and you'll probably find the post about it from back in the day. I can't remember what episode I had talked about it in, but this was an interesting event, and this is something that happened. This is worth looking at if you don't know about this. Freedom is an illusion. Do you mean that in the in the sort of like free will is not really a thing. Who's the one podcaster who used to be really popular? There was a podcaster and he was like was he like a neurologist, or he was some kind of, like doctor or medical researcher originally, and he had a huge podcast following. And his conclusion was that free will was an illusion, which a lot of people were not comfortable with that conclusion. But yeah, and it feels like when he made that clear that that was his position, that was sort of like seemed like undoing of his like very, very large audience at the time. Somebody will remember he was on Rogan all the time, sort of prior to that, and then he's no longer on Rogan, kind of thing. Okay, so are these the JPEG fees you're talking about? Selling an NFT amount 2.5% of sell price paid by the seller. There's a minimum fee amount of 2 ADA when incurred. This fee applies to offers and collection offers as well, and is paid when sold. What was the fee level before? What was the percentage before? Oh, okay. You post down below. Not sure what the fee used to be. Does anybody remember what it was previously? I'd be interested to know what it was before. I have definitely bought NFTs on JPEG Store before, but I cannot remember what the fees were to the seller. Cardano Universe says, I feel like something big is getting close for us in crypto. Trump, Lummis, Congress, Clarity, ETFs. Yeah, I agree with you. It feels like there's a lot of irons in the fire between Congress and the executive branch. It feels like there's a lot of irons in the fire, and we only need like some percentage of them to blossom into something awesome. If just like some percentage of them hits, like we obviously need the market structure bill that's the Senate counterpart to the House's already passed Clarity Act. We definitely need that. The ETFs need to happen. Some of Lummis's initiatives need to happen. Like I think de minimis tax needs to happen, which is something she's pushing. Thank God. And if the White House can bring us some liquidity, bad for my Austrian economic sensibilities, but good for crypto. Number goes up. So if some percentage of those things can happen, it's definitely good. Agreed. If the dragon hates it, I probably love it. Okay, that's good. That's good if they're not retroactively applying that for listings that people already have, because obviously there's a lot of people who have listings on JPEG Store. So, okay, so Danil reports, I think it worked, but there was a bug on the modal showing how many you have consolidated, showing 0. Okay, this is exactly what I experienced. Okay, you have to check the history and it shows you the successful addresses and solutions solved. Okay, this is exactly what I experienced. I think it worked, but there was a bug on the modal showing how many you have consolidated, showing 0. Yep. You have to check the history and it shows you the successful addresses and solutions solved per address. Okay, this is exactly what I experienced. So maybe it wasn't user error. Can you tell me how long, how long did you let it run for? Because for me, it just kind of kept running and showing 0 consolidated addresses. And eventually I stopped it. Did you just let it run without stopping it and eventually it stopped by itself, or did you manually stop it? I can't even says AOS, love your content. Hope we realize Cardano, maybe we could be talking Rust in the near future. I think what you're saying by that is hopefully Cardano realizes its potential. And when you say maybe we could be talking Rust in the near future, I think you're not talking about Rust, the programming paradigm. I think you're talking about Cardano disintegrating into Rust. I think that's what you're saying. If so, I agree. I hope we're not talking about Rust in the future. Kai Pearson says, "Where's our marketing?" Yeah, fair. Okay, Thomas Kirkpatrick says, will is deterministic. Most actions taken by the individual show subconscious intent on MRI moments before the action is taken and realized consciously. Will is deterministic. So okay, so I get the second part that you're saying subconscious intent can be measured on an MRI before the action is taken consciously. That part makes sense to me. So you have to define the relationship though between the subconscious and whether or not, his position. God, I can't remember the guy's name, but his position was kind of like that there is no free will. So I would argue that subconscious intent could be free will, but what he was arguing is that actually there is no free will and that it was all just, you just have like a wet, a wet tissue computer in your head, and it's just making a decision based on, like certain genetics and your life experiences that impacted that wet tissue computer in your head, and that like actually, um, your genetics pushing you in a certain direction, plus, sort of like genetic proclivities plus your life experience have, imprinted on that wet tissue computer, and it's really all determined by those things, and there is no like decision making. So that's my read on what he was actually arguing. But and maybe you're saying the same thing, or maybe you're saying something completely different, but I think it depends on what we think the subconscious is. If there's like subconscious decision making, or if you're saying the same thing as him and the subconscious is really like not decision making, it's just, the manifestation of, genetics plus life experience kind of thing. Okay, Carve Me a Smile says, this was also my experience consolidating. It only took a little while because I had only hit a max of 30 addresses with solutions. Yeah, I think I've only got like 30 or something like that. Okay, I used the third option, full 200 addresses, took about 16 minutes. Okay, I definitely didn't let it run for 16 minutes. So it sounds like what I need to do first is let it run for something like that amount of time. I think I only have like 30 addresses. So, actually, this brings up another question though. Like how many, if you don't mind me, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but how many, like how powerful a processor are you using? What kind of hardware are we talking about here? I'm using like a 16 core processor, and like sort of the default, don't ask me the speed of the processor because I'm going to mess it up if I try to quote it off the top of my head. But I use the default optimal settings inside the Patty and Paul fetcher bot or whatever they're calling it. And I only ended up with like 30 addresses. So is the hardware you're using like substantially more powerful than that? Or did you end up at 200 addresses because you just changed some of those default settings? Okay, Carve Me a Smile says, when you look through the history file after doing it, you see the receipts that were consolidated for each address. Okay, so that's what I need to do. I'm going to let it run for 15 minutes, 16 minutes, whatever, 20 minutes, and then I'll do the same. Thank you guys for letting me know about that. Okay. Okay, Thomas Kirkpatrick, getting back to the subconscious, conscious, free will thing. Like, let's say you're hungry or thirsty. Your body gears up for the process before you are aware and takes the action. Okay, this is similar to what he was saying, and he was arguing. I don't want to get into the very unsavory territory that debate got into with him on his podcast. Just because we don't need to discuss that on a crypto podcast, but I agree with you that being hungry or thirsty is going to cause you, like, let's say you haven't eaten for weeks or you haven't had water for days, and you suddenly walk out of the wilderness into a town and there's, a piece of food behind, in some shop window. There's like, some food behind, as a display in some shop window, or there is, some water you can steal. There's some food or water you can steal. If you're hungry enough, you're going to steal that. You're going to steal that food, or you're going to steal that water. And it's probably, you could argue that it's not, it's going to happen regardless of, maybe it's not even, maybe there is no free will in that case. Maybe the biological processes are going to force you to take that action regardless of what decision you make. But yeah, I can buy into that. I can buy into that. There's many more unsavory sort of scenarios you can talk about with regard to that, and that's what got that podcaster kind of in. That's what made that position of his very controversial. But I think this is like a very safe. This is a very safe example of this we can talk about, and most people would agree with you, I think. Okay, the original fees, selling an NFT amount, 2% of the sell price paid by the seller when incurred. So there wasn't the 2 ADA minimum, and it was just 2% as opposed to 2.5%. Okay, interesting. So they've gone up a little bit, probably to compensate for a couple different things, including the price of ADA being down and volumes being down. Probably both of them. Okay, I can't even says Cardano, the best tech that will never be used. You know why? It's still too complicated for the disenfranchised. I would argue that's like all of crypto, though. I would argue that's all of crypto. Okay, Cardano Universe says, I love the Dragon Lady because when she rears up her head and fire scorches the earth, crypto will uproar like a lion. I hope so. Brody, hey, good to see you. Let's go. Okay, Daniil says a 16-core Ryzen 9. Okay, definitely faster than the Google Cloud Platform processor I was using. Same number of cores, but the Ryzen 9 is probably faster. 850 optimal. So I kind of think I'm at the same setting. How many workers are you using? Did you stick with the 16 workers? I think because you have a 16 core processor, even though the Ryzen 9 is probably a little faster, I think the default inside that platform is to recommend 16 workers. Is that what you used? Okay. Skakak Main says, this is our marketing. The Cardano Foundation isn't doing anything. This channel is our light. We need more of this. I personally don't know how to do it. I'm buying ADA. That I know. Okay. At Cardano says, yes, I just followed the instructions on main site for consolidation, although I didn't use any API mining, only the morally pure browser mining. That's hilarious. It almost is that way, though. That almost is the case, that people would argue that the browser mining is the pure mining, and this is all some like abomination mining where the rest of us are doing. I think it almost is that. Okay, Thomas says subconscious is automatic process of genetics and environmental neural pathways from life experience and present circumstances. Okay, so you are making the same argument he is. Okay, yeah, I get what you're saying. That's definitely the same argument he was making. I can't believe nobody has like figured out the dude's name. He was like a very famous podcaster. Only a few years ago. It wasn't that long ago. He was still very famous. I'll probably remember his name at some point. Probably like the second we get off this stream. Okay, here we go. Carve me a smile says Ryzen 9 7950X 16 core 32 threads. I run it a little low so I don't overheat. And how many did you say you were on 30 addresses as well, or how many addresses did you end up using? And are you on Patty and Paul's software? I can't even says that's not a knock on Cardano, but the crypto industry in general. Yep, I agree with that. The example is given about that village person that held Bitcoin, or that sub-Saharan dude, makes no sense when you travel and realize internet is not that internet. Although it's kind of interesting on the channel, I've talked about stats before about smartphone penetration in some urban areas of parts of places like Africa and other parts of the world. And it's kind of like there are a lot of parts of the world where desktop penetration never got high, laptop penetration never got high, but smartphone penetration is shockingly high in a lot of areas. So yeah, back to crypto. No, that was a good little good little diversionary discussion. Good little side trip discussion. There was plus 1 ADA on those old seller fees too. Okay, so there was like a 1 ADA threshold on those too. Used to be the minimum you could sell for was 5 ADA and they got 2%. Now it's not worth selling anything for 5 ADA. Yeah. Okay, 16 workers. Yeah, so it sounds like your settings are kind of the same as mine. So I don't know how you ended up at 200 addresses. Not that it's a bad thing, and maybe you ended up mining a lot more, somehow. But okay, Carve Me a Smile says, yeah, Patty and Paul, I'm running 16 workers and 400. Is the 400 the number of addresses? Do you have 400 addresses or Sam Harris? Yes, thank you, Mallow. That was Sam Harris. Exactly. Yeah, Sam Harris had the kind of controversial free will, the controversial position on free will. And I don't want to get too far into that discussion because you have to start talking about some like unsavory scenarios, and it's like very, very controversial. So that's a good. It's an very interesting discussion, but I don't think we need to talk about it on this crypto live stream. So I think this is like a good batch size of 400. And how many did you say you ended up at like 30 addresses as well? Oh, okay. Skolder has an explanation for this. Original setup allocated 200 addresses. My 16 core rig only got rewards on approximately 35. Okay. So maybe like I didn't download the GitHub repo right when Patty announced it. I waited like a day or two. So I might have downloaded a later version than somebody who downloaded it right away. So that's possible. Okay, 400 is the amount it tries on each worker. My guess is they use nowhere near 200 addresses. That's just how many it created at the start. Okay, that makes sense. Well, I think this is kind of like last week. Last Sunday, we had a pretty good amount of news, like good volume of sort of crypto news and macro news and news out of Washington that would affect crypto or macro. I think we're kind of starting out the week with a similar amount of news. This week we're also going to be coming to the end of the scavenger mine, which is going to be kind of interesting. So we're going to transition from the scavenger mine to what comes next as far as the midnight larger glacier drop goes. So I think it's going to be an interesting week. Okay, Carve Me a Smile says, I keep getting timeout of, 60,000 milliseconds exceeded on the newer version of the Fetcher bot. So I think I'm going to go back to the one without the consolidation function. I can't even says absolutely smartphones are there. Ever heard of M-Pesa? I have, mainly from Charles talking about it as sort of like, as part of the discussions about RealFi. They tried to bridge crypto to it and was immediately shut down. It is different when you live it as opposed to when you make reference to it. Agreed. Yeah, I mean, 100%. Yeah, I won't debate that. Yeah, I won't debate that. Same timeout after last update. I'll keep an eye on that too, whether the timeouts are any different. M. Marsh says, I'm only a baby on 20 used addresses. Brody says, read Schopenhauer. Okay, this is on the free will discussion, right? Oh, okay, that's concerning. I hope that's not the case for me. Yeah, I definitely don't want fewer solutions. That's for sure. Maybe it is the consolidation that's kind of impacting things, or maybe it's just a change in the volume of maybe that's a change in the volume of solutions that are being generated by the entire mining ecosystem, or an adjustment to difficulty. Brody says Schopenhauer explains that the biological, etc., is only the visibility, the will of the individual, which is primary. Okay. So I think we've gone like 2 hours and 24 minutes. I think this is a good start to the week in terms of news. Last week on Sunday, we had quite a bit of news as well. And it turned out to be, a bit of, a decent volume throughout the week. I hope that's the same with this week. Of course, I don't want like volume of news just for the sake of news. What I want is positive news that's pushing us forward. But when things are so bad in terms of market caps in crypto, pretty much any news is, you hope it can only be good for us, because we're, kind of at like such a low right now. You hope the news is just going to be good. So I hope that's the case. I hope everybody had a great weekend. I hope people are looking forward to a great week. Good luck in the fiat mines. If you're going back to the fiat mines, I sympathize, because I've been there many, many times myself. So I know the feeling. I hope everybody has a great week. Thanks to everybody for jumping on. See everybody tomorrow. Yeah, and thank you. I'm always glad to see when we go a little longer. I'm glad when the people who can't normally jump on the lives are able to jump on, especially people like Dorian, who, it's very early in many people's neck of the woods. So I'm always happy when people can jump on that can't normally jump on. So everybody, thank you for jumping on. Hope you had a great weekend. Hope you're looking forward to a great week, and I'll talk to you soon.